Put it in a casserole. Edge with 1/4 cup of breadcrumbs, mixed with 1 tablespoon of melted butter.
Home for a late snack after a movie, they have something special in the way of a sandwich in mind. Sally calls it tuna rarebit.
During the 1950s, American families had 30 incredible suppers hiding in their Betty Crocker cookbooks that most people today have completely forgotten. These hearty meals helped entire families gather around dinner tables during the hardest times in modern American history. Let's uncover these forgotten suppers that our grandparents relied on when home cooking truly mattered. Beef stroganoff skillet. What made this creamy beef dish the crown jewel of weeknight dinners across America? Picture this. It's 1955, and Betty Crocker's test kitchen in Minneapolis just cracked the code on restaurant-quality stroganoff for the home cook. Tender strips of beef, sliced mushrooms, onions, and that magical sour cream sauce that brought it all together. The genius was in the one skillet method that saved every busy housewife from a mountain of dishes. She'd brown the beef in butter, add the vegetables, then stir in that creamy mixture that transformed humble ingredients into something that tasted like it came from a fancy hotel dining room. Even the pickiest husbands couldn't tell the difference from the expensive restaurant version. Today you'll pay $18 for stroganoff at Olive Garden, but back then Mama made it for under $2 and fed the whole family. Here's where it gets incredible. Wait until you see how they stretched ground beef into gourmet magic. Tuna noodles supreme. Who knew a can of tuna could become the star of Sunday supper? Walk into any American kitchen in 1958 and you'd smell this bubbling masterpiece in the oven. Wide egg noodles, solid white tuna, cream of mushroom soup, and frozen peas, all baked under a golden crown of buttered breadcrumbs. The secret ingredient was a splash of lemon juice that brightened every single bite. Betty's method called for cooking the noodles just shy of tender, mixing everything in a buttered casserole dish, then baking until the edges got crispy and the center stayed creamy. Mrs. Henderson down on Maple Street swore this recipe saved her marriage because her husband finally stopped complaining about fish for dinner. Modern restaurants charge $15 for similar tuna casseroles, but this fed 8 people for less than $1.50. Swedish meatballs in gravy. How did Swedish immigrants' humble meatballs become America's favorite party food? Betty Crocker's 1954 version turned every kitchen into a Stockholm supper club. Ground beef mixed with breadcrumbs, soaked in milk, finely chopped onion, and just a whisper of nutmeg that made all the difference. The magic happened in the browning, rolling each meatball by hand, then searing them until they developed that beautiful golden crust. Then came the gravy, a rich mixture of beef broth and sour cream that coated each meatball like velvet. Sister Mary Catherine at St. Paul's Lutheran served these, every church social, and folks lined up around the block just for seconds. The genius was serving them over buttered noodles or mashed potatoes that soaked up every drop of that incredible sauce. Chicken a la king in pastry shells. What made this creamy chicken dish worthy of royalty on every American dinner table? Step into 1952 and watch Mama transform leftover chicken into something that looked like it belonged in a fancy hotel. Diced chicken breast, colorful bell peppers, sliced mushrooms, and sweet green peas, all swimming in a velvety white sauce made from scratch. The real genius was serving it in those golden puff pastry shells that Betty's recipe perfected for home ovens. She'd ladle the creamy mixture right into the warm shells, creating an elegant presentation that made every family feel like they were dining at the Ritz. The secret was in the seasoning, just a pinch of paprika and a splash of sherry that elevated the whole dish. Even the Methodist church ladies called it restaurant fancy when Mrs. Thompson brought it to the potluck dinner. Pork chops in mushroom rice. Who knew pork chops and rice could create such perfect harmony on one plate? Picture Betty's test kitchen in 1956, where they discovered that baking everything together created magic nobody expected. Thick pork chops, seasoned with salt and pepper, laid over a bed of long grain rice mixed with cream of mushroom soup and diced onions. The genius was in the timing. The pork juices flavored the rice, while the rice kept the chops incredibly moist and tender. Cover it tight with foil, and let the oven work its slow magic for over an hour. What came out was fall-off-the-bone pork with rice so flavorful it didn't need any sides. Mr. Johnson at the hardware store claimed his wife's version could make a grown man weep with joy. Beef and biscuit casserole. How did leftover roast beef become the star of Wednesday night suppers? Betty Crocker's 1955 cookbook turned day-old roast into something the whole family fought over. Chunks of tender beef mixed with carrots, celery, and onions in a rich brown gravy, all topped with fluffy drop biscuits that baked right on top. The secret was browning the vegetables first to build layers of flavor that made this taste like it simmered all day. Drop spoonfuls of biscuit dough right over the hot beef mixture. Then watch those biscuits puff up golden and beautiful. Mrs. Patterson down on Elm Street said her husband never knew it started with leftovers because it tasted better than the original roast. The gravy soaked up into the bottom of those biscuits, creating the perfect bite every single time. Modern comfort food restaurants charge $18 for similar dishes, but this transformed leftovers into a feast for under $1. Chop suey American style. What happened when Betty Crocker brought Chinese flavors to American dinner tables? Walk into 1954 and discover how ground beef, celery, bean sprouts, and soy sauce created the most popular exotic dish of the decade. The genius was in the simplicity. Browning ground beef with diced onions, adding crunchy vegetables and a savory sauce that made every bite interesting. Served over steamed white rice or crispy chow mein noodles from the grocery store, this brought adventure to suburban kitchens everywhere. The secret ingredient was a splash of Worcestershire sauce that deepened the flavor in ways that surprised even Betty's test kitchen. Mrs. Chen at the corner market said American families made it better than some Chinese restaurants because they weren't afraid to add extra vegetables. This dish made families feel worldly and sophisticated without leaving their dining rooms. Ham and sweet potato bake. How did humble sweet potatoes become the perfect partner for Sunday ham? Betty's 1957 recipe turned simple ingredients into a meal that made the whole house smell like heaven. Thick slices of baked ham layered with rounds of sweet potatoes, all baked in a glaze made from brown sugar, butter, and just a touch of orange juice. The magic happened in the slow baking. The ham juices mingled with the sweet potato sugars to create a glaze that caramelized beautifully. The sweet potatoes got tender and creamy, while the ham stayed moist and flavorful. Reverend Williams claimed this dish could convert the most stubborn sinner when Mrs. Davis brought it to the church dinner. The genius was in the presentation. Those colorful layers looked elegant enough for company, but simple enough for family. Salmon loaf with egg sauce. Who turned canned salmon into an elegant dinner centerpiece worthy of special occasions? Step into Betty's kitchen in 1953 and watch her transform humble pantry ingredients into something that looked like it belonged on a fancy buffet table. Canned salmon mixed with breadcrumbs, beaten eggs, and finely chopped celery, all baked in a loaf pan until golden. The real genius was the egg sauce. Hard-boiled eggs chopped fine and stirred into a creamy white sauce that complemented the salmon perfectly. Mrs. Muller served this every Good Friday, and even the kids who claimed to hate fish cleaned their plates completely. The secret was adding just a pinch of dill that made the whole dish taste fresh and bright. Chicken and dumpling casserole. What made this the ultimate comfort food that could cure whatever ailed you? Picture 1956, when Betty perfected the art of fluffy dumplings that cooked right in the casserole dish. Tender chicken pieces swimming in a rich, creamy sauce loaded with carrots, celery, and peas, all topped with perfect dumplings that steamed to perfection. The magic was in the dumpling batter, just flour, baking powder, milk, and a beaten egg that created clouds of comfort floating on top. Drop spoonfuls of batter over the hot chicken mixture. Cover tight and let the oven work its magic for 30 minutes without peaking. What emerged was pure comfort in casserole form, with dumplings so light they practically melted in your mouth. Dr. Peterson claimed this dish had healing properties beyond any medicine when his wife made it during his bout with pneumonia. Modern comfort food costs $20 at restaurants, but this fed 8 people for under $2.50. Here's where it gets incredible with our 11th treasure. Tuna and rice skillet. How did two simple pantry staples create one of America's most requested weeknight dinners? Picture Martha Stewart's grandmother in 1954 standing over her cast-iron skillet as she discovered the magic that happened when you combined canned tuna with long-grain rice in one perfect pan. She'd start by browning diced onions in butter until they turned golden and fragrant, then add the rice to toast it lightly before pouring in chicken broth and a can of cream of mushroom soup. The genius was letting everything simmer together so the rice absorbed all those incredible flavors while staying perfectly tender. Then came the tuna, folded in gently at the very end so it stayed in beautiful chunks throughout the dish. Beef and macaroni, bake. What transformed simple macaroni into the most requested casserole at every church potluck dinner? Step into Betty's test kitchen in 1955, where they discovered that layering was the secret to creating perfect harmony between beef and pasta. Ground beef browned with diced onions and seasoned with salt, pepper, and a secret pinch of oregano that made all the difference in the world. The magic happened when you layered cooked elbow macaroni with the seasoned beef and a rich tomato sauce made from scratch, then topped everything with a generous layer of sharp cheddar cheese. Chicken croquettes. How did leftover chicken become the star of elegant dinner parties across suburban America? Picture 1953, when Betty Crocker's test kitchen perfected the art of transforming yesterday's roast chicken into golden, crispy croquettes that looked like they belonged in a fancy French restaurant. The secret started with finely minced chicken mixed with thick white sauce, seasoned with just a whisper of nutmeg and a generous pinch of fresh parsley from the garden. Mrs. Henderson served these every Thursday at her bridge club, and the ladies would arrive early just hoping for an extra serving. The magic was in the technique, shaping the mixture into perfect cylinders, then coating each one in beaten egg and fine breadcrumbs before frying them to golden perfection. The outside became incredibly crispy while the inside stayed creamy and rich, creating a texture contrast that made every bite absolutely delightful. Pork and bean casserole. What elevated humble pork and beans into a dish worthy of Sunday dinner with the preacher? Walk into any American kitchen in 1956 and you'd discover how Betty Crocker transformed canned beans into something that made the whole congregation ask for the recipe. The foundation started with quality baked beans, but the magic happened when you layered them with strips of bacon, diced onions, and a sweet molasses glaze that caramelized beautifully during the slow baking process. Mrs. Williams at First Baptist claimed this casserole could make even the most refined lady lick her spoon when she served it at the annual church social. The secret was in the layering technique, alternating beans with thin slices of salt pork and rings of sweet onion, then topping everything with a mixture of brown sugar, mustard, and tomato sauce. Shrimp and noodle bake. How did frozen shrimp become the star of elegant weeknight dinners across Middle America? Picture Betty's kitchen in 1957, where they discovered that combining shrimp with egg noodles and a rich cheese sauce created magic that rivaled the finest seafood restaurants. The genius started with cooking egg noodles just until tender, then folding them with cooked shrimp, cream of mushroom soup, and generous amounts of sharp cheddar cheese. Mrs. Thompson from Riverside Drive served this every Friday during Lent, and even the Catholic families who claimed to hate fish never missed her dinner invitations. The secret ingredient was a splash of dry white wine that brightened all the flavors and made the sauce incredibly smooth and sophisticated. Layer everything in a buttered casserole dish, top with buttered breadcrumbs mixed with paprika, then bake until golden and bubbling around the edges. The magic happened during baking as the flavors melded together while the top became beautifully crispy and the noodles stayed perfectly tender. "This tastes like something from a fancy hotel," claimed the mayor's wife after trying it at the Ladies' Auxiliary fundraising dinner. The newspaper food editor featured it as proof that elegant dining doesn't require elegant prices in her popular weekly column. Ham and scalloped potatoes. What made this the ultimate Sunday dinner that brought 3 generations together around one table? Step into 1954 and watch Betty Crocker perfect the art of layering that created the most requested dish at every family gathering. Paper-thin potato slices arranged in perfect overlapping rows with diced ham scattered between the layers and a rich cheese sauce poured over everything. The magic was in the slow baking that allowed the potatoes to become creamy and tender while absorbing all those incredible ham flavors. Mrs. O'Sullivan claimed this dish could turn any ordinary Sunday into a celebration when she served it to her extended Irish family. The secret was using a mandolin slicer to get those potatoes uniformly thin, ensuring they cooked evenly and created beautiful layers throughout the casserole dish. Each layer was seasoned with just a pinch of pepper and a whisper of paprika that added color and warmth to every single bite. The cheese sauce was made from scratch with butter, flour, milk, and sharp cheddar that melted into silky perfection as it baked. "This is better than any restaurant in the city," declared the bank president after tasting it at the community fundraising dinner. The newspaper Society columnist featured it as the dish that defines American comfort food in her popular weekend section. Turkey tetrazzini. How did Thanksgiving leftovers become the most elegant pasta dish in American home cooking? Picture November 1955, when Betty's test kitchen discovered that combining turkey with spaghetti and a rich cream sauce created something that surpassed even the original holiday meal. The foundation started with tender pieces of roasted turkey folded into cooked spaghetti with sliced mushrooms, diced bell peppers, and a cream sauce made from scratch. Mrs. Patterson claimed her family looked forward to this dish more than the actual Thanksgiving turkey because it was comfort and elegance all rolled into one. The secret was in the sauce preparation, combining butter, flour, turkey broth, and heavy cream with just enough sherry to make it sophisticated. Layer half the mixture in a buttered casserole dish, sprinkle with Parmesan cheese, add the remaining mixture, then top with more cheese and buttered breadcrumbs. The magic happened during baking as all those flavors melded together while the top became golden and crispy and the pasta stayed perfectly tender. The food editor at the Chicago Tribune wrote, "This recipe proves that leftovers can be better than the original meal," after featuring it in her holiday cooking series. What made this dish special was how it transformed simple ingredients into something that looked and tasted like it belonged in an expensive Italian restaurant. Beef stew casserole. What transformed ordinary beef stew into a complete meal that required just one dish to feed the entire family? Walk into Betty's kitchen in 1956 and discover how she revolutionized comfort food by topping traditional stew with a golden biscuit crust that baked right on top. Tender chunks of beef simmered with carrots, potatoes, celery, and onions in a rich brown gravy that developed incredible depth of flavor. Mrs. Jenkins served this every Wednesday at the boarding house, and traveling salesmen would adjust their routes just to be in town for her famous stew supper. The magic started with browning the beef properly to develop that deep, rich flavor that became the foundation for everything else in the dish. Layer the stew mixture in a deep casserole dish, then drop spoonfuls of biscuit dough right over the top before sliding it into a hot oven. The genius was in the timing. The stew stayed hot and bubbly while those biscuits puffed up golden and beautiful, creating a complete meal in one dish. "This is what Sunday dinner should taste like," claimed Pastor Morrison after trying it at the church social, where it became the most requested dish. The newspaper home economics columnist featured it as the perfect solution for busy mothers because it provided vegetables, meat, and bread, all in one convenient casserole, chicken and rice skillet. How did two simple ingredients create the most requested one-dish meal in suburban American kitchens? Step into 1957 and watch Betty Crocker perfect the technique that allowed busy mothers to create restaurant-quality meals using just one skillet and minimal preparation time. The magic started with browning chicken pieces until the skin turned golden and crispy, then removing them while sautéing diced onions and celery in those flavorful pan drippings. Mrs. Rodriguez at the community center claimed this dish could make any weeknight feel like Sunday when she served it to the Mothers Club meeting. The secret was adding long grain rice directly to the skillet with chicken broth, letting everything simmer together so the rice absorbed all those incredible chicken flavors. Return the browned chicken to the skillet. Cover tightly and let the stove work its magic for exactly 25 minutes without peaking even once. What emerged was perfectly tender rice and juicy chicken that had cooked together in beautiful harmony, creating a complete meal that required no additional sides. The local newspaper food writer declared it the busy mother's best friend after featuring it in her popular weekday dinner series. The genius was in the technique, using the chicken drippings to flavor the rice while the chicken stayed moist and tender during the gentle simmering process. Each serving delivered the perfect combination of protein and starch that satisfied growing children and hard-working fathers. Shepherd's pie deluxe. What elevated humble ground beef and mashed potatoes into a dish that impressed even the most sophisticated dinner guests? Picture Betty's test kitchen in 1955, where they discovered that proper layering and seasoning could transform simple ingredients into something that rivaled expensive restaurant entrees. The foundation started with ground beef browned with diced onions and seasoned with Worcestershire sauce, fresh thyme, and just enough tomato paste to add depth. Mrs. O'Brien claimed this became her signature dish because it made everyone feel like they were dining at a fancy club. The magic was in the vegetable layer, a colorful mixture of carrots, peas, and corn that added sweetness and nutrition between the seasoned beef and creamy mashed potatoes. The secret to the perfect mashed potato topping was adding cream cheese and butter that made it incredibly smooth and rich, then using a fork to create decorative ridges that turned golden during baking. Layer everything carefully in a deep casserole dish, starting with the seasoned beef mixture, adding the vegetable layer, then spreading those beautiful mashed potatoes evenly across the top. The genius was in the final touches, brushing the potato surface with melted butter and sprinkling with paprika that created a gorgeous golden crust when baked. "This looks like something from a fancy hotel dining room," exclaimed the church social committee chairwoman when she first saw the finished dish. Each serving was substantial enough to satisfy hearty appetites while being refined enough to serve to important company without any embarrassment. The newspaper food columnist wrote, "This recipe proves that comfort food can be elegant," after featuring it in her Sunday entertaining section. Today's gastropubs charge $21 for similar shepherd's pie dishes, but this fed 8 people under $3. The real kicker was how it actually improved overnight, making it perfect for make-ahead entertaining and busy family schedules. The beauty of this particular shepherd's pie recipe was in its versatility and foolproof nature. Betty's instructions were so detailed that even novice cooks could achieve professional-looking results every single time. The key was in the preparation sequence, browning the meat first to develop those deep, savory flavors that would permeate every layer of the finished dish. Chicken Divine Casserole. How did this elegant chicken and broccoli combination become the crown jewel of ladies' luncheon menus across America? Step into the sophisticated dining room of Mrs. Margaret Whitfield in Westchester County, 1958, where she first served this creation to the Garden Club board meeting. "Ladies, this recipe will change your entertaining forever," she announced as she presented golden casserole dishes filled with tender chicken breast, bright green broccoli spears, and the most luxurious cheese sauce anyone had ever tasted. The magic began with poaching chicken breasts in seasoned broth until they were incredibly tender, then layering them over perfectly steamed broccoli in individual ramekins that made each guest feel special. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, the club president, whispered to her table-mate, "This is more elegant than anything I've had at the Plaza Hotel," as she savored the rich hollandaise-style sauce made with real butter, egg yolks, and imported Swiss cheese. The genius was in Betty Crocker's revolutionary technique of combining classic French cooking methods with American convenience, creating a dish that looked and tasted like haute cuisine, but could be prepared by any home cook with basic kitchen skills. The secret ingredient was a splash of dry white wine in the sauce that elevated every single bite and made the whole dining room smell like a European cafe. Each serving was artfully presented in its own individual dish, topped with a delicate sprinkle of fresh chives from the garden and a light dusting of paprika that added both color and warmth. The food editor at Harper's Bazaar featured this recipe in their entertaining section, calling it the dish that brings restaurant sophistication to suburban dining rooms. Today's upscale restaurants charge $28 for similar chicken preparations, but Mrs. Whitfield's version cost less than $4 to serve 8 distinguished guests. The real brilliance was how this recipe connected back to the beef stroganoff we discussed earlier, showing how American cooks were mastering elegant European techniques right in their own kitchens. Modern convenience foods simply cannot replicate the satisfaction and pride that came from creating such sophisticated dishes from scratch, using Betty Crocker's tested techniques. The true mastery of this dish lay in its timing and temperature control, skills that Betty's detailed instructions helped home cooks develop with confidence. Mrs. Whitfield discovered that the broccoli needed to be steamed for exactly 7 minutes to achieve that perfect balance between tender and crisp, maintaining its vibrant green color that provided such beautiful contrast against the golden chicken and creamy sauce. Tuna surprise ring. What transformed humble canned tuna into a show-stopping centerpiece that amazed every guest at the most elegant dinner parties? Picture the dining room of Mrs. Robert Harrison in Greenwich, Connecticut, 1959, where society hostesses gathered to witness what the local newspaper would later call the most ingenious dish of the social season. The foundation of this culinary masterpiece began with Betty Crocker's revolutionary gelatin technique that suspended chunks of premium white tuna, diced celery, and hard-boiled eggs in a delicate lemon-flavored aspic that shimmered like crystal when perfectly chilled. Mrs. Harrison's cook, Mary Sullivan, later revealed the secret. The magic was in the timing, letting each layer set just enough to support the next, creating beautiful striations of flavor and color that looked like something from a fancy French restaurant. The preparation required patience and skill, carefully arranging colorful vegetables in geometric patterns around the bottom of the ring mold, then slowly adding the tuna mixture in perfectly measured portions. Mrs. Caroline Astor III was quoted in the society pages as saying, "This dish represents everything sophisticated about modern American entertaining," after it was served at her annual spring luncheon for the museum auxiliary. The genius was in the presentation, unmolding the ring onto a crystal platter surrounded by crisp lettuce leaves and serving it with homemade mayonnaise that had been delicately flavored with fresh dill from the garden. Each slice revealed beautiful layers of tuna, vegetables, and aspic that created an almost stained glass effect when the light caught it perfectly. The technique required such precision that Betty Crocker included detailed step-by-step photographs in their premium cookbook, showing exactly how to achieve professional results at home. Beef Burgundy Elegante. How did Betty Crocker bring the sophisticated flavors of French cuisine to American dinner tables without requiring a culinary degree? Enter the kitchen of Mrs. James Worthington in Boston's Beacon Hill, where she first attempted this ambitious recipe for her husband's important business associates in 1957. "Gentlemen, tonight we dine as they do in Paris," she announced, serving tender beef that had been slowly braised in Burgundy wine with pearl onions and mushrooms until it practically melted with a fork. The technique began with carefully selecting the finest chuck roast and cutting it into perfect 2-inch cubes, then dredging each piece in seasoned flour before browning it to perfection in her grandmother's cast-iron Dutch oven. Mr. Worthington's business partner, visiting from France, was overheard telling his wife, "Mon Dieu, this American lady cooks better than my own grandmother in Burgundy," as he savored the rich wine-infused sauce that had developed incredible depth during hours of gentle simmering. The magic was in Betty's simplified technique that allowed home cooks to achieve professional results without the intimidating complexity of classical French cooking methods, which infused the entire dish with aromatic flavors that filled the whole house with the promise of an extraordinary meal. Each serving was presented with the elegance of fine dining, the dark, glossy sauce coating tender beef and vegetables that had absorbed all those incredible wine flavors during the long, slow cooking process. The food editor at Gourmet magazine featured this recipe as proof that American home cooks can master the most sophisticated European dishes, praising both its authenticity and accessibility. The genius was in the make-ahead preparation, as this dish actually improved when prepared a day early, allowing all those complex flavors to meld and deepen overnight in the refrigerator. Today's French restaurants charge $42 for similar beef burgundy preparations, but accomplished home cooks could create this masterpiece for under $5 and serve 8 people with restaurant-quality results. This elegant dish connects perfectly with our earlier Swedish meatballs, showing how American cooks were embracing international flavors while maintaining their own unique style. The real sophistication was in understanding that great cooking is about technique and patience, not expensive ingredients or complicated equipment. The beauty of this particular preparation lay in its forgiving nature and spectacular results, making it the perfect introduction to French cooking for ambitious American hostesses. Mrs. Worthington discovered that the quality of the Burgundy wine made all the difference, using a bottle good enough to drink rather than the cooking wine that many recipes suggested, creating a depth of flavor that elevated the entire dish beyond ordinary braised beef. The pearl onions required special attention, blanching them first in boiling water to make peeling effortless, then browning them alongside the mushrooms to develop those caramelized surfaces that added both visual appeal and concentrated flavor to the finished sauce. Betty's revolutionary approach included detailed timing charts that took the guesswork out of braising, specifying exact temperatures and cooking times that ensured consistent results, regardless of the cook's experience level. The browning process was crucial, requiring patience to sear each piece of beef individually rather than crowding the pot, developing those essential fond particles on the bottom that would later dissolve into the braising liquid and create the foundation of the rich sauce. Mrs. Adelaide Montgomery from the Beacon Hill Ladies Society noted that the key to perfect texture was maintaining the braising liquid at a gentle simmer rather than a rolling boil, allowing the tough connective tissues to break down slowly while keeping the meat tender and succulent. The herb bouquet could be customized with seasonal availability, though the classic combination of bay leaves, fresh thyme, and parsley stems provided the authentic French flavor profile that made this dish restaurant-worthy. Many accomplished cooks discovered that adding a square of dark chocolate during the final minutes of cooking deepened the color and added a subtle richness that guests could never quite identify but always complimented. The serving presentation became an art form, with the glossy sauce ladled generously over wide egg noodles or creamy mashed potatoes garnished with fresh, chopped parsley that provided both color contrast and a bright herbal note that balanced the rich wine flavors. What truly set this dish apart was its ability to transform a simple dinner party into a sophisticated culinary experience that guests would remember and request for years to come, proving that French elegance was achievable in any American kitchen with proper instruction and attention to detail. Lobster Newburg Supreme. What made this luxurious seafood creation the ultimate symbol of elegant American entertaining during the golden age of dinner parties? Picture the opulent dining room of Mrs. Charles Pemberton III in Newport, Rhode Island, 1956, where she served this magnificent dish to visiting dignitaries and left them speechless with its restaurant-quality sophistication. The foundation began with fresh lobster meat gently sautéed in real butter, then folded into a velvety sauce made with heavy cream, egg yolks, and just enough dry sherry to create that distinctive Newburg flavor that had made the dish famous in New York's finest establishments. Mrs. Pemberton's chef, Henri Dubois, formerly of Delmonico's restaurant, was quoted in Town and Country magazine as saying, "Madame has mastered what many professional kitchens struggle to achieve, the perfect balance of richness and refinement that makes Lobster Newburg a true culinary masterpiece." The magic was in Betty Crocker's simplified technique that demystified this intimidating dish, breaking it down into manageable steps that allowed home cooks to achieve the same results that had previously required professional training. The secret was in the sauce preparation, tempering the egg yolks slowly with the hot cream to create a custard-like consistency without any curdling, then finishing with a splash of brandy that added depth and complexity. Each serving was presented in individual puff pastry shells or over delicate rice pilaf, garnished with a sprinkle of fresh paprika and chopped chives that added both color and a hint of onion flavor. The genius was in the timing, preparing everything just before serving to maintain the silky texture and prevent the delicate sauce from breaking or becoming grainy. The food critic at Bon Appetit declared it the dish that proves American home cooks can rival the greatest restaurant chefs, after tasting it at a charity luncheon where it became the talk of the social season. Today's upscale seafood restaurants charge $55 for lobster Newburg, but accomplished hostesses could create this luxury for under $8 and serve 6 guests with unmatched elegance. This sophisticated dish connects beautifully with our earlier shrimp and noodle bake, demonstrating how American cooks were elevating seafood into increasingly elegant presentations. The real artistry was in understanding that true luxury comes from perfect technique and the finest ingredients, not from complicated preparations that intimidate rather than inspire.